perspective and what some of the numbers are looking like.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you for having us here. I think this is a great forum to get some information out to people. So currently on the PPP, on the PPP2, we've done over 4 million loans, and we've used up about $513 billion. So the good news is that there's still about $125 billion available for those small businesses who still need help and are still looking to apply. There's still a lot of money to apply. So that's the good news. And there's more good news the second time around. I think we've done a really good job in trying to get some of the smaller businesses some dollars. So last time, if you remember, there was some complaints about the loans going out to larger businesses, and the average loan size was over $200,000 to each borrower. This time we've reduced it to about $110,000, and in the last 10 days, we've seen that number drop to $32,000 a borrower. So what that means to us is that we are getting more help to those small businesses that really do need the help. I think that is a telltale sign that we are trying to get the numbers to those small businesses. Another key thing here was in PPP2 was that we had set-asides for the medium and smaller lenders, and those lenders went through the dollars very quickly, and we even gave them preferential treatment to get the dollars out quickly to those small businesses. So I believe that this time around we got a lot more money to those mom and pops and those small business and those one owner Schedule Cs than we did the first time around.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, there's definitely been a big boost and a lot of positive feedback on the second, tranche or round of funding that came out, for the PPP program. So, we had a lot of questions come in. We're going to really talk about three topics. We're going to talk about the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, the EIDL program, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And then we're going to, wrap it up with, what other types of products and access to capital can small businesses utilize today in addition to these two programs? So we have a lot of folks who are joining us today that, have applied, for the Paycheck Protection Program. And now that they've applied and many have gotten approved, kind of like, now what, right? What's the next steps? And, I know this was everything I've read about it or I heard about it on the news. Now it's kind of like, okay, now that I have this approval, kind of like, what does this really mean? And I think, there's some questions that came out. We have one from, a local oil company, that says, can we provide clarification on the PPP money and what does it mean regarding a grant? How does it turn into a grant and what's the process behind that? So if you can kind of like just go into the fundamentals of the PPP program, that would be great.
Well, it's a great question, and thanks for asking it, because a lot of people are calling all the time asking the same kind of question. So bottom line is that the PPP, we're quick with acronyms to throw it around. It's the Paycheck Protection Program. The core intent of the legislation was to put paychecks back into employees' hands. So it's incumbent upon the business owner, and kudos to all of you online, by the way, trying to get updates and a clarity of understanding of how this all comes together. But the PPP is designed to help you, the employer, get your employees paid. Whether your shop is open or not is immaterial. The point is to get your employees with their paycheck. So a lot of phone calls are getting sort of coming in around the area of how do I document this stuff? You're going to need documentation, and many of you have access to online guidelines and what have you as far as what the PPP is based on. It's going to be a program where you're going to pay for a period of 8 weeks, basically the same level of payroll you had these folks on prior to the pandemic. So it's incumbent upon you, when you do receive funding, that you keep it very clear on where the money, where the money's going to, and ideally, and we get a lot of questions about what percentage has to go to payroll, et cetera. Key thing is this whole thing is designed to go to payroll. You are allowed to, if circumstances dictate, 25% of the loan proceeds can go to other eligible expenses, such as mortgage interest, utilities, rent, So that's the general provisions that hopefully give you some clarity. But a key thing, and I hear it all the time, just please keep excellent records, because there will be an element of forgiveness, and some new guidelines will be coming out shortly on exactly how that looks. But for the bottom line is, if you have money right now, please keep a very meticulous care of documentation on where the money's going.
Yeah, absolutely. And one question on the documentation front, and regarding PPP, we have a commercial cleaning company has a question on, getting a better explanation on a full-time equivalent formula for PPP forgiveness. How is the FTE component determined?
So that's a good question. So a matter of fact, we've been asked that a lot. And in the guidelines that just came out that we don't have full guidance yet on the forgiveness part, they're calling full-time equivalents a 40-hour work week as a full-time equivalent. So if you had two 20-hour employees, that would equal one full-time equivalent. So it's 40 hours that they're using as the base for a full-time equivalent. Now, that doesn't mean a guy works 37 and a half hours and he's not a full-time employee. He's still a full-time employee. There is some wiggle room there. Or if somebody works a little bit later and works 42 hours, you can carry it over to next. It doesn't work that way. But for the most part, it's a 40-hour work week as for a full-time equivalent.
Gotcha. Okay. And back to, some of the forgiveness components, there's been a lot of, inquiries and questions on the forgiveness. So with that, we have a trucking company that has a question, and they'd like to know, when we know if our PP loan is forgiven, and we were told it could only be used for payroll and only those portions would be forgiven. I know we just, talked about the formula, but kind of like as an additional question to that, we have a hair salon, in Babylon Village that had a question, again with forgiveness, that if she cannot use the 75% of the PPP for payroll and use a smaller percentage for payroll, will that amount still be forgiven? So really with the forgiveness portion, if we can just touch on that one more time, and also, is it an all or none? If you have a $50,000 loan, PPP loan, can you get 30,000 of it forgiven and have a $20,000 balance, or must you meet the entire hallmark, in terms of the 75-25, and you only have 100% forgiven?
Councilman, that's a great question. And so one of the things that you have to realize is that part of the purpose behind doing this is to make it as user-friendly as possible to small businesses. So making it an all or none, I don't think would have been helpful to small businesses. So there is an equation involved, and I'll just give you a general answer on it. So first of all, like Rob said, if you use the money primarily for payroll, and if you use last year's payroll and your payroll's approximately the same this year, you shouldn't have any issue at all meeting that 75% guideline. But if you do, and if you use more than that, that's great, because that's the intent of the legislation is first of all to get people paid, and also to get these people off of unemployment, so that this way, when your business does go back into operation, you're back in business right away, and you don't have to retrain. You can get going right away. You don't have to look for new employees. So, and it is 100% forgiven if you do meet the guidelines. Now, let's just say you don't meet the guidelines. You decide to use less money than you should. Now it comes into what are the full-time equivalents and how much of those dollars that you use. And there's a formula for that. And you will get a partial forgiveness. The rest of the loan will be so it's a 2-year loan with 1% interest with a 6-month deferment. So what will happen is, and interest starts on the date that you get the loan. So even though there's a 6-month deferment, you're still paying interest for that first 6 months. So what will happen is whatever's left over, you're going to be paying over 18 months as a loan to the lender. So you would be getting 100% forgiveness if you use it correctly and use it the way it's supposed to be used, as at least 75% towards payroll and the rest towards mortgage interest, utilities, and rent, you'll get 100% forgiveness if your FTEs are the same also, and your payroll is the same. But if you don't, you will get a partial forgiveness.
Gotcha. Okay. And, you know, there's a lot of questions in terms of, okay, that's great information. I understand now how it works. You know, is there going to be any type of, you know, official guidance that comes out, you know, on how I have to calculate this myself? Does that come from my bank? Does it come from the SBA? You know, things pop up, you know, on like the U.S. Department of Treasury's website before really you might get disseminated to, you know, the local SBAs throughout the country to really give the proper guidance. So talk to me a little bit about how when the guidance comes available and how business owners should look to access that information.
If I can jump in, first of all, keep in mind the timeline here. So more guidance just came to the forefront. Many people look at the news, and as John said, we're not really, we'd be doing you a disservice briefing on the details right now. And the lenders in the same boat. They just received this bucket of information. So more information will become crystal clear to you. That being said, ultimately, the lender will provide you guidance. Almost every lender that I know of so far, they either have worksheets or they will give you very articulate guidance sheets that can help you sort of figure out exactly what the rules of engagement are for your forgiveness component. In addition, if I were a business owner and I'm worried about contacting employees, reopening for business, I would be reaching out to the resource partners that are out there on Long Island. I'm the Long Island branch office manager for the SBA. We have resource partners that are second to none. We have a location in Stony Brook as well as right in the town of Babylon, in Farmingdale, SUNY. You really should be reaching out to one of those or go to the state website. And I'll mention this a couple times during the presentation today, but nysbdc.org, nysbdc.org is the New York State website for SBDCs. There are classes going on right now. There are mentorship opportunities available. You need to just click on that and just see who you can speak to or what class you can sit in on addressing these very topics. What are the best practices? So if you have downtime, I highly recommend you either contact one of those sites at Farmingdale or Stony Brook, you can Google them, or go to the state website to get some specific information on how you start to accumulate your data and get it ready for when the lender gives you complete information, you're ready to rock and get this thing submitted for forgiveness.
And the forgiveness time clock, I guess, starts and timeline starts the date of the note issued?
It's the date of disbursement of funds. So as soon as the lender puts those funds into your account, your clock starts there. So there is a little grace period. So let's just say your payroll starts on a Monday and you got the funds on a Wednesday. We would accept Monday so that you have a full payroll cycle to start your clock.
Gotcha. Okay. And question that just came in regarding the PPP program and payroll documentation. So how do relatively new businesses, if they don't have all of 2019 payroll records, what documentation can they submit in order to access the program?
So they do have for businesses that have just started in 2019, they have special guidelines where they can go from January 1st to, I believe, is February 15th, the date. They can use those records, but there is a shorter period of time that they can use as payroll records for those businesses that just started in 2020. I apologize. So from January 1st, 2020 to February 15th, 2020, if they just started business in 2020.
Gotcha. And then kind of along that route, we've had several questions come in from, sole proprietors, regarding, PPP. So one question is, this is from a banker at a local bank, regional bank. What will a sole proprietor need to submit as documentation for forgiveness of a loan if they normally simply utilize a Schedule C for their own payment of profit? So it's a single business owner, there's no W-2. Is there any kind of feedback that you might have on how that would work?
So we don't really have guidance on that, but I can give them a little thing on what we anticipate the way it'll work. So first of all, they're a Schedule C, so they have to have filed a 2019 Schedule C. Even if they did not file their 2019 return, the bank is going to require them to at least give them a 2019 Schedule C. The Schedule C then, whatever the net amount is from line 31 of the Schedule C, they divide that by 12 and multiply by 2.5, and that gives them their loan amount. Once they get the funds, they should be paying them that same monthly amount as they were in 2019. So that's going to be the proof for their payroll. The rest of the money can go to rent and utilities. Now, what the bank is going to be asking them for specifically, we don't know yet, but I can tell you that if they, what I suggest is that when you do get these funds and it's just a suggestion, there's nothing in this legislation that requires it, that you put the funds in a separate account so that it's easily traceable when you disperse money out of that account, saying, you say all the funds are in this account, and you can show all the disbursements and exactly where those disbursements went to. So I would recommend the same thing for a Schedule C, that they would pay themselves out of that separate account for PPP to their personal account to show payroll. And if they do have rent, utilities, or mortgage interest that they've paid out of that account, it should make it easier for them to do it when the time comes. But understand that there's still not a lot of guidance on that. And also from the first round of PPP, some businesses are just starting to get through that first 8-week period. So there's going to be a lot more information on that coming.
Gotcha. Okay. That's great. And that's good information. And, I think the whole thing also, it's hard to, to have patience and to kind of wait for the guidance to come out, but, that's just really the reality. So there's facts and, that are available now in terms of, how to, for the forgiveness portion, but there's also some time that needs to be, put in terms of getting the right interpretations and guidance, which is important, that we have to just pull back a little bit and just wait to get that information.
Yeah, and the reason behind it, just so there is a reason behind it, is that this was something that came on us really quickly, and the legislation came through very quickly. And in order to get the dollars out quickly, there wasn't enough time to put all the guidance out and help the small businesses. So what the agency decided to do was to get the money out as quickly as possible and then provide guidance afterward. It doesn't sound like the best way to do it, but the agency felt like it was the best way to help small businesses.
Gotcha. We had a question come in that somebody is a sole proprietor and they're having difficulty finding a bank to work with. Do you have any advice on, any resources that they could access, for the PPP program?
That's a great question, and we get it often. So there is a very good resource. If you go online to SBA.gov, the website, and literally you take the SBA.gov /Paycheck Protection, one word. So SBA.gov /Paycheck Protection /find, FIND. And what you'll come to is a website where you just enter your zip code, and it will give you a number of potential lenders. They're all SBA certified lenders. Let me just make one quick point here. Because of the nature of what's going on here, there might be a lot of lenders that are maybe not lending, or for whatever reason, maybe they're maxed out for their particular portfolio. Because of what's going on, you can select a bank across the street or across the country. So don't sell yourself short. I mean, spread your net kind of wide. It might take a few tries. I do definitely not recommend you apply to a bunch of lenders because more problems can occur. But keep it focused and ideally call ahead. But there is a great resource in SBA.gov just for your investigation.
And stemming off of that, in terms of the application to multiple lenders in order to get, your PPP approved, I had a question that came up regarding the multiple applications. So multiple applications are submitted, and then, one of the institutions that they're applied to is a very, robust, large financial institution, on the global size, which got approved. The other application got approved and funded, And then the large global institution, even though they were told, please withdraw and cancel my application, funded. So now there's two pieces of funding. Is the advice, as soon as the note is issued from, the bank one, pay off the note in totality? Like what's the logistics behind it? 'Cause I'm sure, this is happening to more than one person, that after really having, not that great success with round one, and now round two, you're getting two loans funded to you. How do you handle that situation?
So what I would recommend is that, first of all, they should take the first loan that comes to them and accept that loan payment. But if a subsequent one comes in, they should write a check back to the lender and return the funds on the second loan application.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And right now it's one. If you got the PPP loan, you can only apply and accept one PPP loan for, that goes into that 8-week period. We've had a question come in regarding, okay, if I have the loan, for that 8-week forgiveness period, and that 8 weeks then is up, am I able to apply for a second loan, after that 8-week period?
We have no guidance that you can. So it's probably best to pursue a course of the assumption you're only allowed to have one PPP. We can't comment really on pending legislation.
Gotcha. Okay. So now moving on to the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. This was a product that, a lot of small businesses have applied for. And, I think that there's a number, that are waiting, in the wings, waiting to hear back, from the SBA. Can you talk a little bit about, this program, how it works, what, as a small business owner, we should be doing at this point if we didn't hear anything, and, what's the best way to kind of check up on our applications?
Sure. The EIDL, again, acronym city here, but it's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And it was designed to be afforded to business owners with a maximum of $2 million loan at the top end. It's 3.75% interest for for-profits, 2.75% for nonprofits. Just be quite clear here, the portal for applying for an EIDL currently, it has been closed pending further developments from future legislation or funding. So if you have an EIDL request in and you haven't been notified, there's no need to panic. Just give you some kind of context for the magnitude here. There's been over 5 million applications for these loans. So just do the numbers, it's vast. So they're doing the best they can. And from a positive perspective, I'm here locally. I'm in the same county as you all. So I have got a lot of feedback that people are starting to get their loans. I had been getting a lot of feedback that advances were coming in. Part of the EIDL included an opportunity for you to check off a box that you wanted an advance, which was up to $10,000. As it's, again, because of the scope and the intent of trying to get as much money to as many people, the way they've sort of progressed with this is the advance has amounted to about $1,000 per employee for those that asked for an advance. And this was directly to the SBA. And what it is, it's a 30-year term loan. So that's the overall mechanics of it. But again, for where we are right now, people are clamoring in some cases. I haven't heard anything. I understand the level of concern. But if you've got no information just yet, a couple of things I would recommend you do is make sure you're constantly checking your spam folder and your junk mail file to make sure there's nothing in there. You may very well get a deposit in your account that you listed for the EIDL without an email heads up. So just keep on checking that. I'm sure you do anyway, but you may very well have received an advance. Once you are processed and they're addressing you, you'll be getting an email from the SBA addressing things like opening up your own unique portal, where you'll probably be asked to submit unique information to your business to get this thing moving down the road.
Gotcha. Yeah, and stemming from that, there's a hotel group that sent an inquiry in regarding, they had an accepted application with EIDL, and then they got a declination that was unverifiable information. How does somebody, whether it's this or another situation where, local manufacturer here in the town applied for the loan. It originally said it was up to $2 million. They got it approved for $150,000. They want to know if they could appeal. So there's been multiple questions about how they go about, small business goes about appealing certain aspects of the loan, whether it be a denial or the amount. Any advice on that?
When you do get your response, whatever that email context is, or how it's the very bottom of it, there is an opportunity for you to make a phone call or submit an email appealing whatever it was that you're contesting. And I highly recommend you do so. This is not a one and done, the edict has been given. I mean, there is an opportunity for discussion and narrative via digital means for right now, but I would definitely put my numbers together and submit a compelling email to that address and start the dialogue going, because it's a business decision, and obviously it's important. So the opportunity is there to start that discussion.
Gotcha. Okay. We have a local health and fitness center in the town that has a multiple part question on EIDL, and I think it's within your wheelhouse to be able to kind of answer, because it's pretty generic. EIDL, is this a grant? Initially, we were told it would be a grant. What is the interest rate? And if it's not a grant, is it able to be forgiven?
So,
sorry, go ahead, Rob.
well, I'll take a first shot at this, but so thank you for asking the question, because it cannot be asked too many times. So the EIDL advance, if you checked off and you got the advance, again, it might be anywhere between $1,000 up to $10,000, depending on the number of employees you have. That portion is forgiven. There's nothing else you need to do. With a PPP, there's a different process you follow. The EIDL, the advance, is forgiven. Beyond that, when you get your bulk of your EIDL loan, and that's going to be a higher amount if you're approved based on a couple of factors, then that is in fact a loan. There is an 11-month deferment. Your first payment for your EIDL loan, not the advance, the loan portion, will be the 12th month following the time you get it. And that's 3.75% interest. If you're for-profit, for nonprofit, it's 2.75% interest. As John mentioned, there is a deferment. Deferments mean you don't make a payment until, but that doesn't mean your interest is not accumulating in the background. So keep that in mind. But it's 30 years. This is designed to be a 30-year loan so that your debt service, your payments, can be manageable during these difficult times. So that's in essence the nuts and bolts of it.
Gotcha.
So just a quick thing on what Rob was saying with the EIDL loan. One thing is that even though the portal is closed, it is open for agricultural businesses. So if you're an agricultural business, you can still apply for the EIDL loan. So some businesses have been applying for the EIDL loan because they do see that it's open. And what will happen is if you're not an agricultural business, you're going to get an email saying that your business didn't qualify, the portal's been closed, and it's only open for agricultural businesses.
Gotcha. Okay. Just to switch back, we had a question come in regarding full-time equivalents for the PPP. So we have a participant who said that they have a full-time employee. I have an employee who worked 40-hour work weeks, and this year they work 30-hour work weeks, but at a rate of pay that exceeds the 40-hour pay rate from last year. How will they be counted for full-time equivalent? How are the overtime hours accounted for the full-time equivalent count?
So, like I said, we don't have full guidance on that. Normally, the SBA does accept 30-hour full-time equivalents, but for some reason, when it came to the forgiveness on this SBA product, it went to 40 hours. So, this is just a guess. I'm going to tell you that if your dollars are the same as what you're paying them and there's no pay reduction and they're working a 30-hour work week, you should be fine in the calculation. But we're going to get more information on that, but I don't think it's something that he's going to have to worry about if he's been paying them at the same rate of pay at 30 hours as he would have as a 40-hour equivalent.
Okay. Another question that came in, there are certain industries that have independent contractors rather than W-2 employees. So this question came in: what funding is available for small business owners, specifically in the beauty industry, that do not have employees W-2, but rather independent contractors?
Well, the definition of an independent contractor is non-employee compensation. That's specifically what they get paid. So they're not employees of the business owner. That's why he pays them on 1099. So the business owner who is paying those individuals on 1099 is not eligible for PPP unless they have other employees on payroll. Okay. The individual people who are getting paid 1099s, each one of them can apply for PPP individually, because those people will be Schedule C employees, and that's where they'll be reporting their income. So meanwhile, the individual business would not be applying for those individuals. The individuals that received payment, that receives the 1099, are eligible for PPP.
Gotcha. But if they have a W-2 employee, they have somebody that works the front desk or an office manager, bookkeeper, any W-2 employee, they'd be able to, as the business owner entity, potentially apply for PPP then.
Correct. Even the owner is, and if the owner themselves are on W-2, they can also include that into the PPP calculation.
Gotcha. Okay. So kind of switching gears now to if I'm a business owner and, I'm still looking to access capital, and PPP and EIDL, whether I applied for it or not, or if I didn't apply for it, what opportunities are there with the SBA to still be able to access certain types of loans? I know the SBA has been, an intricate part of local lending institutions and community banks, for programs like 7A and 504 and microloans. Are those still available? How do you apply for it? And what types of businesses are able to apply for those loans?
So at the SBA, it's still business as usual. Our loan products have always been available since, even before the pandemic and after the pandemic. So you would apply for them through your lender, and this is maybe where the more difficult part may be, is that now your lender is virtual, so you'd have to contact them virtually. We do have the 7A program, that's available to all small businesses, and in general, that's 500 employees or less is eligible for small businesses. And you can get anything from lines of credits to term loans through the SBA's 7A program. We have the 504 program, which I feel is the best product that you can get out there for real estate or large equipment. And that is, you could put as little as 10% down and get 90% financing through certified development companies. Again, like I said, you'd have to contact them all virtually. And all our micro lenders are still in business, giving loans out to those small businesses. They're all available to them. And if they'd like some information on that, they can go to sba.gov/NY. And at the bottom, you'll see our resource guide. And in our resource guide, it'll give you a description of all our loan programs, and also tell you where you can contact individuals to get information on those loan products, so that your business can still grow, expand, and succeed.
Anthony, if I can jump in, what John's saying is so huge. I mean, there are a number of there's not a ton, but there's a couple of very good programs you can use with the SBA, but there's also other products and loan services that you might get access to if you just utilize the resource partners through, John mentioned the resource guide on the SBA.gov website. Again, you have SCORE Service Corps of Retired Executives. They are just at your beck and call, whether email them or call through the website, that they can give you ideas. And act as your consultants, your mentors, as well as a small business development center, wherever that is, or women's business centers across the city. So, I mean, in our community, there's no shortage of people free of charge that will give you objective and unbiased information on the kind of things that you, like maybe you have a real estate need. Again, they can direct you towards a 504 loan perhaps, or maybe it's an equipment need or something else. But given what's going on right now, you need like that Dutch uncle, if you will, to sort of direct you in the right area of resources. And that's be the first stop I would make, whether I find out I have an EIDL or a PPP.
So
Gotcha.
Anthony, I'm going to try to look up to see what a Dutch uncle is, because I've never heard that one before. But, you know, the one thing I always say is that while maybe you don't get the financing you need, you can always get help from our resource partners, and you can always get the you know, free consultation from our resource partners. And sometimes that's more important than any type of financing.
Gotcha. We had one question come in just now on back to PPP and forgiveness. Okay, we said that, you know, when the clock starts, you know, in terms of the forgiveness timeline, the question is, when does the clock stop? We know it's an 8-week period, but can you pay the forgiveness? Is the forgiveness determined ahead of time? Is it right after the 8-week period? You know, like exactly, you know, do we have a timeline after the 8 weeks? Is it going to be soon thereafter? Is there something written into legislation that says it has to be within a certain timeline?
So there's nothing specifically on when that's going to happen. But you do have to wait for the full 8 weeks to expire before you can apply for forgiveness. I think in the next week or so, we're going to get a lot more information on the forgiveness portion. I think a lot of those questions are going to be answered. The way I can see it happening is, and this is just, like I said, totally a guess, is the way you applied. It's probably going to be virtual. Wherever you'll apply to, the lender's probably going to have a portal in their back, and they're going to have a questionnaire online that you're going to fill out, and you'll probably upload some documents to them. And that's the way I can see it possibly happening, but it'll be after the 8-week period. And remember, that's why they have that 6-month deferment. So in essence, there's 4 months left after the 8 weeks in order to get that forgiveness submitted.
Gotcha. Okay. And do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with the with our small businesses across the town?
So I'll start, and I'm sure Rob always has something to say. My favorite Dutch uncle. But what I'll say is that, you know, the SBA is here is always to try to help small businesses. While there's a lot of frustration, and I understand that a lot of people are under a lot of stress, and we don't have all the answers, but you know, I can assure you that our agency is working around the clock to try to get information and dollars to those small businesses as quickly as possible. And we are trying to help those small businesses get through this. So I would say, you know, a little patience, and hopefully, you know, with a little perseverance, we'll be right back where we were before.
The only thing I would add, Anthony, is I think people are somewhat panicking in some respects because they don't have a really good grasp of forgiveness issues, but they have the money, and the clock is ticking. Key thing is just document what you have. If you have payroll data from a payroll company, or you have your own system, just make sure they're pristine, because if you can just collect that at the end of the 8-week period, no matter what the forgiveness rules of engagement are, you'll have that available to the lender to sort of make your case for the forgiveness. The banks are not in this, nor is the SBA, to catch anybody doing something wrong. They want the money to go to the right reasons, in the right areas. So just articulate and keep a straight accounting. Even if you don't have the sophistication of a payroll company, whatever system you use, you have your good faith efforts will carry the day. So barring guidance right now, we've got some time before this thing terminates. Just keep on doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, this was incredibly valuable. You know, thank you both for participating. You know, and to the small businesses, you know, you truly are, you know, the backbone of our local economy, you know, here in the town of Babylon and across Long Island. and there are resources and capital available to access. The SBA is a great partner to do that with. If you applied for EIDL or PPP, remember, there are still other forms of funding and capital that you can look to acquire, to help, grow and maintain your business. And to the SBA, I wanted to thank you for always being available and accessible, to the many small business owners that are across our town and region. And we had a great visit from the Associate Administrator, Bill Manger, a couple of months ago that we did a small business forum in the village of Lindenhurst, which worked out great. And myself, as councilman and head of the small business committee here in the town of Babylon, we really appreciate all the efforts and outreach that you do to the local community. So on behalf of myself, my fellow town board members, and Supervisor Rich Schaefer, thank you to the SBA for participating today. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, by all means, please send them into my office at Councilman Manetta's office. You can get my contact information on the Town of Babylon website. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you for having us,
You're welcome.
Councilman.